Thank you very much indeed for that wonderful welcome and introduction from Father Dominic. We should highlight that we have made a very important decision at Aid to the Church in Need to create, for the first time really, a very special relationship between ACN UK and Liberia, whereby all the funds that Aid to the Church in Need pays out, collected from all around the world, will be routed through the UK office to help in Liberia. And this encounter this evening is a core part of that. And as you'll see, we are a select group. And the reason for that is that the primary focus for tonight is for us to record things on our camera as part of our ongoing Project Liberia campaign, which is going to run for 2 years, and which, as Father Dominic rightly pointed out and made clear, is really centered around a country that has, in many respects, been forgotten. Aid to the Church in Need works in 140 countries around the world, and it is able to reach those parts that others can't reach. Liberia is indeed one of the poorest 10 countries, perhaps even one of the within the top 5 or 6, depending on which measures you use. It's a country where up to 50% of primary school children regularly don't go to school, where the economy has been badly shattered, and where, would you believe it, during the Civil War, 1 in 3 of the population had to flee the country, where 250,000 or more of that 2 million population at that time died. And Father Garry has accompanied Liberia through that terrible, terrible journey. And he comes to it after 51 years with what I think you'll find is an immeasurable degree of hope and faith. I don't know whether Father Garry remembers this, but I first met Father Garry in 2002/3, when I just started at Aid to the Church in Need. And Father Garry had been through a very difficult time at the height of the Civil War. And I remember when I first started being very moved by that encounter and sharing. So we're going to hear a bit about that tonight, as well as the extraordinary mission that he's carried out with the help of so many others, which for us at Aid to the Church in Need is such a source of inspiration and really urges us on. And the other thing to say about Father Garry is that he and I have a personal connection in that we both come from the Surrey, Hampshire border. Mm-hmm. So Father Garry grew up in Aldershot, stroke, I think, in a bit of Rowledge as well thrown in.
No, Aldershot, really.
Aldershot, particularly. Mm. And I grew up just over the border into Surrey in Farnham. So when I met Father Garry, he said, "Do you know this street? Do you know this road?" And of course, I knew it. So we immediately bonded over that. And also, Father Garry's formative experiences were in the army, and my father was in the army. And they served in Aden, may well have served in Aden at the same time. So without further ado, we're going to discuss with Father Garry and hear him tell us about some of his most important formative experiences in the country.
I'll say one word of introduction. Just add one word.
So Father Garry, I think at this point, would like to add one word of introduction.
Following what you just said. At any rate, I'm the most unlikely person to be a Catholic missionary in Liberia.
Sure not.
Yeah. And I used to go to, my name is really Gareth Jenkins. You know? And I used to go to the Methodist chapel on the Ash Road as a little kid, a little small boy.
In Aldershot?
In Aldershot. And I wanted to become a Sunday school teacher. Never happened. And then I was put into the row of signals. And then I was sent to the Yemen when I was 18, did crypto. And then that's where I met the first Catholics. And so I was baptized in the vicariate of South Arabia and Somalia as a 21-year-old. That's where my missionary calling, I think, started. You know, I saw the need in the Yemen as a 21-year-old, and I wanted to try and see how I could serve God by helping the people. So that's the start of the story.
Great. So that's the preamble. We're going to take the journey forward to the year 1973. This is Father Garry has been by this stage, with the Society of African Missions, as Father Dominic mentioned. He's completed his training. He's just been ordained. And he suddenly gets a call, not to go to Nigeria, where you thought you would go, but to Liberia, a country probably not really heard of very much at all. So we were going to ask him to describe, if he would, his earliest experiences on arrival in Liberia in 1973, 51 years ago. Father, would you like to share your thoughts on that?
I was at Holy Innocents, Orpington, waiting for the visa, and then it came through. And January 73, it was snowing, even at Gatwick, and British Caledonia was still running. And so I left a rather cold Sussex January morning, and in the evening I arrived in a very hot and humid city called Monrovia, named after President Monroe of America, in Liberia. And I was then, after a week orientation, so there were no roads down the Crewe coast, the southeast, so the SMA had a two-seat Cessna, and in fact Bishop Siki, the Bishop of Bangor at the time, the Liberian bishop, he also used to pilot the plane, and he had the habit of reading a novel when there's a tropical storm, and you're in this two-seater, you know, and you're scared of your life, and he's just reading a novel. Anyway, the mission plane flew over the school in Sashtown, and then Joseph Weir, the mission student, would run out to the field and clear the cows from the field so the plane could land. So that was my first introduction. And it was a fishing town. And all the big fathers went off to Rome for some big chapter. And so Terry and myself, young American and myself, we were left. And I think the rice ran out, we were eating breadfruit. Anyway, we were introduced to it. The challenge of living in a small town. There's only one thing I want to talk about on this issue. I think when I left the seminary, I thought I knew a lot, but actually, to be truthful, I had a lot more to learn from the people, from their culture. And I remember one old lady, there was an eclipse of the sun the next day. Father, God's going to show his power tomorrow. And I remember thinking to myself, how, a simplistic way of viewing things. And years later, I thought, well, that woman has much more faith than I have. So I was in a learning situation that these country people had a deep faith, which I also need to try and absorb, and also to appreciate their culture. Wherever you go, culture is different. And for me, the culture is almost sacred. So not to be cynical, but to have empathy without being patronizing. That's no good either. So I was learning these things that went along, to be kind and compassionate. And I was in a learning situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's wonderful.
And I still am learning.
You think
and the thing is, sometimes we Westerners, we go to a situation like that, and why they do this, why they do that. I remember telling one reverend sister, I said, sister, you go into the village, you pray with the people, you listen and look, and you will learn a lot about the people without asking any questions. And that's been my way, really. Don't be inquisitive, respect the people, and they will love you.
Well, I'm sure that is a lesson we can all learn from. And we'll now move the hand of time forward from 1973 to the late 80s, by which time Father Garry has managed to achieve a great deal with the help of many others. And I think it's true to say, Father, that you were involved in the creation of 50 or more chapels, churches, outstations. And I'm just going to ask how you managed to get to that point of so many chapels, outstations, and other things built. How was that possible?
The new Liberian bishop, the late Archbishop Michael Francis, who, by the way, later was awarded the Robert Kennedy Memorial Award for Human Rights. Nelson Mandela received it, and so did Bishop Desmond Tutu, Michael Francis. Once a year, someone that's really struggled for the poor, for human rights. That's the kind of bishop that became a bishop in the end of '76. And so he said, Garry, will you move to Western Liberia? So on the 1st of February, '77, I rented a small little house in the town called Bommy Hill. The fishermen is Tubbenberg, we'll call it Bommy. The iron ore mine was just closing. 31st. In fact, some of the old priests said, what are you sending a young fella, or younger, to Bommy Hill for? The mine closing. And the bishop said, look, there's more to Bommy County than an iron ore mine. There are many villages. That was his answer. Okay. But Bishop, I don't know any of these people. We haven't worked with the Gola tribe, the local indigenous tribe. So I said, can I start a little school? So yeah, go ahead. So I turned my living room into a kindergarten. But after 3 months, we were evicted. The landlord said, you're paying rent for a residence, you turn it into a school. So we were told to get out. Anyway, in the process, one of the 30 kids is the present Bishop of Cape Palmas, Andrew Carnley. So the way I say, God works in mysterious ways. So we moved up the hill and we rented another place. And then I saw some land and we bought this land. And so from 78, 79 until 86, 87, we built, it's now a senior high school, science lab, library and all that. And Dominican sisters from Rosary Priory Bushy came to help. Now, interesting, because Sister Columba, who was the Prioress General, she came on a visit. And Michael Francis called me up and said, Garry, I got a cardinal visiting me. Not many cardinals come to Monrovia. So I got to look after the cardinal. We look after the Prioress and Dominicans. So I said, okay, Bishop. So if you know where they're not coming to Bommy Hill. So anyway, I drove into Monrovia and dirt road then. And Sister, the Dominicans have very good schools though, and in the UK. So anyway, I drove Sister from St. Teresa's Convent, the Ethnian Convent, to Bommy Hill. And the day before, it was a school vacation. So I called Bishop Carnley, Andrew, and Siafa Kandak. I gave them 50 cents each. As you go tell all the kids they should be in school tomorrow, middle of the summer vacation. There's one big sister coming here, So I didn't know where any children would be in the school, but they were all there, So I gave the two boys their 50 cents. So, and we were sitting on boxes, the kids were, I was ashamed really, So then let me take her to Guy Hill, that's our first outstation. So I took her there, and then, but on the road, the country devil was there. That wasn't planned, so she even met a bit of the culture. And so we got back to Monrovia after a very interesting day. So he said, Father Garry, you will be hearing from us. Oh, yes, sister. Next day, Bishop called me and I said, what do you say to that sister? I said, nothing, Bishop. I bet she didn't want to go where I was going to send her. She said she'd seen enough. So the Dominicans came at the end of that year and they served the church very well for 10 years. Very good education, So we thank God for that. So I didn't start anything. God had his hand, I think, and a very good bishop. And people came along. We trained catechists. The catechists are the backbone of the church. And the bishop was very serious getting a catechetical program going. And that helped the spread. So how I went to the first Gola village, the Gola is the local ethnic group. We went to Gaia Hill, and that was the first outstation. So it was like the gospel several weeks ago, the mustard seed, you know, it just grew because that's what God wanted to happen. So today there are maybe 60 outstations in 3 counties, which is, when the bishop sent me Western Liberia, that's 3 counties out of 15. The whole country, there are 15 counties, sent me to 3. One man. Anyway, a lot of people have helped in the process. And then talking about nursing, we got Doris of the Precious Blood from America. And Sister Barbara Ann was our mother. She was 10 years older than all of us. But she was killed in an ambush. And in fact, we lost 5 American nuns in 1992. And that was very heartbreaking for me. So that's how we started, very small. And then I was driving the bishop to Robertsport one day, on Sunday. And I said, Bishop, you want something in clay, don't you? Yes, Gary. Well, so I left Father Pat Connolly in Bommy, and I went to clay, and we started all over. I said, this time, Bishop, we'll find the money. You. I did all the running around to build St. Dominic's. So he said, okay, that was a job, a good deal. So the bishop kept his word, and we put up a church, a convent, home economics, and then the war came.
So now moving on to the war, we have to underline at this point the severity of Liberia's civil war. This was a war that left almost everybody who lived through it in a state of very severe deprivation and destitution. So we know, as I mentioned before, that 1 in 3 of the people of Liberia, by the end of that series of civil wars over the course of 15, 18 years, that 1 in 3 of the populace had fled abroad, that 250,000 or more had died, and we had child soldiers and terrible, terrible fighting. Father Garry was right at the heart of that time in Bomi Hills, and he has a whole slew of stories that he can share with you, but time is not on our side. So I've asked him if he would to perhaps do the impossible, which is to select one such story and of that time. He has to be careful what he says because there are difficulties, political difficulties, so he's going to be careful in some of what he's going to say. But in fact, he alluded to the story in part during his homily. So, Father, perhaps you'd like to share with us.
At any rate, I can be very kind of Liberian English, a bit frisky sometimes. So I was asked to preach in the cathedral at the Masses in 1993. So the administrator, he said, you can preach at each Mass, but not the Cardinal's Mass, at 11 o'clock. So it was St. Patrick's Day, actually. So I said, I beg you, man, let me just say a few words. He said, well, after communion. So he said, I'll give you a minute. So at any rate, it was about 10 minutes. And afterwards, Basil came down and he broke ranks and came over to me, and we had a great chat.
This is Basil Hume?
Yeah.
Goodness,
so
right.
You shouldn't, I'll just warn you. So I can't just do one story, but I will be very quick. The Civil War started Christmas Eve, 1989, all right? And a guy called Charles Taylor, he was the main leader at the time, the rebel leader. So the heat of the war gradually moved down towards our area. You could kind of feel it, all worried and everything else. You saw people fleeing, different people, ethnic groups with their loads trying to get Sierra Leone and Guinea. And so we didn't know how we would even, have the strength to put up with this, the tension. So when the rebels came into our area, in fact, I was in Claydon, this new mission, and overnight it became an IDP camp for people fleeing from Monrovia. So I spent my time really looking after IDPs, internally displaced people. And someone spotted my Aid to the Church in Need Jeep, all right, that retreating government soldiers, apparently, at least they were in uniform, took from me, all right? So some rebels said, "Well, we saw your Jeep down near the Syrian border." So, oh, really? Yeah. Well, I'll get it for you. So they'd already taken themselves the Silesian Don Bosco Jeep. So I had to pay for the fuel to put in the stolen Don Bosco Jeep to go down to the border to see whether that was my car or not. But anyway, on the way back, I saw the one remaining vehicle we had in the deanery. It was an orange Isuzu. I thought, oh God, we lost that car now. So we're walking everywhere. And then I was in the car with the rebels with their RPGs and all that kind of thing in the back. So anyway, I saw this car coming along. Then I saw a nun inside. I thought, oh, we haven't lost it. So I got out of I jumped down from the pickup and I saw the sister there. I said, "Gary, we're going across." That means to Sierra Leone. And there were tears in my eyes, and I said, "Sister," I'm thinking of the refugees on the campus. If I ran away, if I left, how would they manage? Women with small children. So I said, I just shook my head, and they understood, and they drove off. And I just went into church and said, "Well, Lord, you brought me here. Please, take care of me." So then there was an armed robbery, which was scaring. I want to run away, but again, running away and then just leaving the people like that out of my own personal fear, it's not correct. And then there was an ambush. I had a car at that time, and it was 1996. And then I was driving along this road, going around a curve, and the road was blocked. And 3 guys jumped down, started firing shots, and I managed to reverse in the dark towards a bridge, and we got a 3-point turn, 90 miles out back Monrovia. So we thank. But the next day I said to Zena, the caddy, Zena, if you fall off a motorbike, get on the next day, overcome your fears. So I let go back to Bommy Hill. So the next day we went back to try and overcome our fear. In 2002, May the 11th, that was, as I said, the 30th anniversary of my ordination. I knew we were in a dangerous area, but because so many people had died, I just didn't want to go to Monrovia and then come back and find more mounds of earth, And I said, I'm not fit to be a pastor if during times of tension, I just go for safety. So I stayed there. I was going to Monrovia, an old taxi, a broken down, ugly taxi, but had a good engine. So the fighters didn't want it. So I used to get 2 or 3 bags of rice, carry them back. Then we will cook the rice on the canvas, carry it on a wheelbarrow around the town to the blind and the crippled who had not run away. And that's how the rebels caught me in the town. So May the 11th, 2002, they attacked our town. And the firing got closer to the mission. And then I heard them shouting, telling the IDPs to get out of the classrooms at the top of the school. And then they came down to us and they told me to open up. So eventually the field commander came along, and he got on his satellite and said, "Oh, Father Garry, still here, oh?" So a voice on the other end said, "Take good care of him." So I didn't quite know what that meant. But at any rate, they put me in a NGO pickup and took me to this place in the town. There was a counterattack that night, which was scaring. But anyway, then after 2 or 3 days, they said, "We'll get Father out of here." They were afraid of another counterattack. So I left Bommy Hill on the Tuesday after May the 11th in a former NGO pickup, which I guess they had taken, requisitioned. And there was the field commander, Zena the catechist, me here, 2 guys with boots hanging down the top with the AKs, 2 sitting on the bonnet, artillery piece at the back, 16. That's how we left Bommy Hill. Very, very sad, for a priest. And so then we reached one town called Bopolu, stayed the night there. Then we went to Fassima, where I spent sort of a week with them. And then we walked. And we stayed in one town called Kalata. And the old pappy there, the old man there, he was the acting paramount chief. He wouldn't let them just put me anywhere. He gave me his room. He said, "Father, I'm going to sleep on a proper bed." So then we started this walk through the forest. I didn't eat that morning, so I just collapsed and in the bush. And I said to Zena, I thought, "I've finished. I know my limitations," so I thought I was going to die there in the bush. And then the 16 child soldiers with the AK-47s, they were behind, and they sat down in a semicircle, and they said, "Father, we're here for you. You take your own time." Very humbling, humbling. So we carried on. I couldn't make it to Guinea, so they had to call the last bit of the trip, we drove through Guinea, and then eventually I was handed over to the president of Guinea, and then the nuncio heard about me, and he got me free. But going through that forest without mass, without communion, it was hard for me, really. Because many years before, when I was a Methodist, that's the one thing I wanted, regular communion, to be able to go to confession. And now, the time in my life when I really needed it, anyway, I had my Bible. So when I was freed in Conakry, in Guinea, as I said, we went to the chapel, and I went to confession. I really needed confession. And took communion, and that was a very important day for me. So these are some of the things, but all the time, God's grace. And I know the other incident I did, this armed robbery. When you're you can pretend what a situation should be like of danger, but you can't really. So these guys, they took me into the room, they threatened to kill me many times and put a gun in my back. And I started saying the Jesus prayer. "Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner." I kept saying that to myself. I was oblivious to these guys with their guns in my room. I forgot about them. I was ready for them to spray me, but I was at peace with God. And then they put me outside and just disappeared. But it was real. It wasn't a dream. It was real. And so I think all along, God is there, the Lord is there, Jesus is there, when we're in the face of these problems in life.
Thank you, Father. And I'm sure all of us if any of us have been through an experience like that, or anything resembling it, we would have thought, well, I'm through with Liberia. I'm through with this experience. I've done my best. I will go back and resume or take up a different life, ministry in a different place. But Father Garry isn't that kind of person. He decided to go back. And so we're talking 2002, 2003. And so my question to him is, Father, why did you feel it was so necessary to go back and resume your ministry in Liberia?
Well, from the end of 1990 until 2002, was that 12 years? Mm-hmm. The people supported me. I supported them materially, and with prayer, of course, but they supported me, and they prayed for me, and they prayed with me. We journeyed together through all these hardships, and And there's 300 mounds of earth in Bommy Hill, kids. And I couldn't just leave them. We have a beautiful cross there now. And we just put up a cross up in clay for the kids that died of hunger there, you know. So my heart is with those people. And we've journeyed so far together. Mm-hmm. And now I'm watching the kids in the IDP camps who are now men and women, you know, with their own children. And so a lot of unfinished business, and I had to encourage them to leave the IDP camps and come back to their villages. In fact, I took the first 12 strong young men to this village to clear the bush and try and rebuild their lives again. So, you know, there was need to fix the churches again, the chapels, get schools started. And we signed a memorandum of understanding with USAID that they would help us fix in Dominic's school if I would agree to take 50% disarmed kids, disarmed soldiers, fighters. So when we reopened St. Dominic's School in 2004, out of 750 kids, 400 had been disarmed. Now that was a very interesting pastoral experience for me, and I learned a lot, you know. Then I could see why the Lord allowed me to go into the army as a kid myself, because I could understand trying to help them, you know, to get back to their lives. So there was a lot, and it's still, you know, developing. And as Father Dominic said, you know, I felt the same as Father Dominic, that Liberia tended to be forgotten, you know, and that's why I was stubborn. I wanted to stay there with the people, and I just saw part of them. So, and
well, and we saw that for ourselves, how much you're appreciated and loved. And Bishop Andrew Carnley, who we know, who's the Bishop of Cape Palmas. There's only 3 dioceses in Liberia, one of which is Cape Palmas. And when we first met Bishop Andrew Carnley, I said I knew Father Garry, and he immediately turned and said, he is I think he called him your spiritual father. And many of the clergy and others refer to Father Garry in those sort of terms. So he has been a real mainstay and stayed with the people. What we wanted to do now was just to ask Father Garry a little bit about how Aid to the Church in Need has helped him. But before I do that, we had an agreement before I asked him the question, which was just to say a little bit about how we've helped Bishop Andrew, of course, one of his first pupils. So Caroline and I had the great privilege of being welcomed to Cape Palmas with Bishop Andrew, and we were told, welcome to the Siberia of Liberia. This being because it's a very difficult place to reach. There's no direct road that can take you from Monrovia, the capital, all the way through to the other end of the country, namely Cape Palmas and Harper, the main town there. And so you have to take a tiny little plane. And this plane is not for the faint-hearted, I have to say. So we managed it. But when we went there, we were able to see, despite the distances, despite the travails, the great work that ACN has done there. So, and Caroline's going to allude to this in more detail, but just to pick out 1 or 2 projects. One is the support that we're planning for the pastoral centre. Plan for a pastoral centre that was the old seminary, the junior seminary, and then it became an Ebola field hospital during the height of the Ebola time, and now the great plan is for a pastoral centre. And then the second thing that we saw, which we're very excited about, is the plan for the Divine Mercy Parish in Fishtown, Rivergy. So that work has already begun, but I won't steal Caroline's thunder. She'll want to say a bit more about that. And also support for the Indigenous sisters, Indigenous
Holy
community,
Family.
the Holy Family, support for their minibus, support for their training, support for their computer equipment, and as part of that, their amazing outreach to destitute young women and girls young children, young girls who many of them have suffered terrible violence at home, sexual violence included, and they're being given a fresh start in this centre. So it's a great project that we're very proud of at Aid to the Church Needs. So that's Cape Palmas, but we just thought we'd ask Father Garry a little bit about how ACN has supported him.
Our diocese, the Archdiocese of Monrovia.
Yeah.
So as John said, when I was trying to go out in the villages in the late 80s, I just had a Toyota Corolla. It was an ordinary saloon car. And, in the wet season, you need four-wheel drive, You get stuck everywhere. So almost every time I went out in the night, I'd get stuck, break down, walk back on the road and all that kind of thing. So Regina Lynch heard about this. And so
he's the director of projects for Aid to the Church at the time, now our executive
president. So she gave me the money to buy, recognized all over Bombay County, this green Jeep. And the last time I saw it, actually, I was carrying an IDP, a lady who had a very sick baby, and I was taking them to a hospital. And then on the way back, some people at the checkpoint gave me the evil eye. And I almost sensed we were going to lose the car. So I came back on the mission. I parked the Jeep behind the house. And then we were just having our rice at 1 o'clock. And there's some soldiers outside, want to see you. So the commander wants to see you at the checkpoint. So I said, okay, I'm coming. But it's raining. Why are you walking? I said, well, I don't mind rain. Of course, I wanted the car. So I drove the car down just to the end of the mission. And then I left the keys in the ignition because I knew we're not going to lose our lives over a vehicle. So we lost the vehicle. And then the other strange story, many thousands of English translations of the Children's New Testament, the little red book, was sent out, I think, probably, I don't know, from Germany, probably. Thousands, maybe even a container load. Yes. And they arrived right in the middle of mayhem.
This is Aid to the Church Needs Child's Bible, which we've been doing since 1979.
And thousands arrived. So I said to the bishop, I said, yours is the safest place. So we put them in his basement. Well, I'm blowed. Didn't they have a go at the bishop's house? And so at that time, anywhere around Monrovia, past any rebel checkpoint, you'd likely be offered New Testament. Anyway, many of them reached the displaced camps. And so it was a rather strange way of we didn't plan to do the distribution that way. But anyway, on a more serious note, our first outstation in Bombay County, Gaia Hill, is now a beautiful octagonal church, very modern church. And that's all from assistance from Aid to the Church in Need. And then there's probably other things in the diocese. And then we are hoping, fingers crossed, and asking the Lord that you visited that small community in Ba.
Yes, we did. St. Josephine Bakita.
That's not far from Clay, not far from Gaia Hill. So we're hoping that maybe we can build a permanent church rather than a bamboo structure as we have at the moment. So the Aid to the Church has done a lot, and we do really appreciate the work over the years, so thank you. I'm very, very grateful to everyone.
So we have one particular question for you, Father, and the question is to look back over your 50 plus years in Liberia and to consider what would you suggest it could be described as your legacy, your long-term impact. What do you feel looking back? Would you like to say, this is what we were able to do, this is what mark we've left on the people, on the situation, on the church, whichever of those you feel is most appropriate?
Personally speaking, I can leave no legacy. if there is a legacy, it's for people to understand more deeply the compassion and the love of Jesus Christ. I guess the next few years I will die in Liberia. There'll be a little bit of cross in the garden, and I said it should all be done simply, and I said I should be laid to rest with these children who died during the war behind the mission. But I don't want any memory of myself, really. I feel part of the people, and I'm very happy, of course, that Andrew Carney is a bishop. I'm happy that James will be graduating next semester as a medical doctor. I'm very happy that John, Sumo, Samuel, and Nicholas are now civil engineers. I'm very happy that John Jeaton now has his BSc in environmental science. So yes, some of the young people that we've helped along, and I can see from the way they're living, they're really trying to, they've accepted Jesus into their heart and the church. So it's just, if God has used me, unworthy as I am, to plant his message a little bit more into the hearts of the people I'm serving, I'll be very happy about that, and hope that they in turn will help other people. The people the church has helped. I'm just an instrument. But I hope that the legacy is also that the people we've been able to help, they in turn will be with that generosity of spirit to help others who are in need. But it's just a privilege for me to be able to live in that kind of environment, and I thank God for that. So,
thank you very much, Father. So as we conclude our interview today, our discussion today, I'd just like to thank everyone for watching, for taking part in the form of listening and watching today's interview discussion. It has been a great privilege to spend time sharing and hearing from Father Garry, and we, as I'm sure do you, really join in offering him the assurance of our prayers, our support, and a commitment from Aid to the Church in Need to support the work of the Church in Liberia in support of the very values, the very essence of what Father Garry has conveyed today. So thank you very much indeed.